The canyon carried a hush that evening, a kind of silence that felt older than the wind itself. Colt McGraw rode through it slow, the creak of his saddle echoing against red stone walls, each hoofbeat sinking into sand like memory. He was a tall man, broader than most doorways, his frame casting a shadow that seemed carved straight out of the cliffs. But his eyes betrayed him, pale and tired, carrying the weight of 30 winters in a land that rarely forgave. It was there, as the sun bled gold into violet, that he heard it, a cry so faint he almost mistook it for the whine of a coyote. Yet something in it tugged at his chest, the kind of sound that spoke not of fear, but of desperation. He pulled his reins, listening harder, the air stiff with anticipation. What he found next would stay with him until the end of his days. 2 figures bound to a stone, their wrists raw from rope and dust thick upon their skin. Winona, the elder at 23, lifted her chin when she saw him, her dark eyes fierce though the ropes had burned her flesh. Beside her, Tyanata, younger by 3 years, leaned against the rock, lips cracked but gaze steady as if holding back tears would grant her dignity. They were daughters of a proud bloodline, and yet here they were, tied as offerings in a canyon forgotten by mercy. Colt dismounted, his boots crunching against the gravel, and for the first time in years, his hands trembled. He asked nothing, only moved forward with his knife to cut the bindings. But before his blade touched rope, Winona's voice rose, startling in its clarity. "Will you marry both of us?" The words hung there, heavy, impossible, as if the canyon itself leaned in to hear his answer. Colt froze, the blade still against the rope, his heart hammering like a hammer against an anvil. He had faced duels, storms, nights without food, but never had words struck him so hard. Marriage? Both? His mind reeled, but he looked at them again, really looked, and understood their question was not born of romance but survival. Tyanata's voice followed, softer but sharper somehow. "It's the only way the town won't send us back to die." The desert air thickened, carrying with it the weight of choice. Colt sliced through their ropes, each cut echoing like the snapping of chains, but he knew freedom would not end at the stone. It would demand something greater, something he wasn't sure the world, or his own scarred heart, could give. That night, under the shelter of his fire, the silence was nearly unbearable. Flames flickered against their tired faces, shadows painting them fragile yet unbroken. Winona spoke first, her voice low, steady, telling him of the shame laid upon them, how their kin turned cold, how settlers spat at their passing. Her words carried rejection like a brand, and Colt felt it burn because he too knew that exile, having been cast out of his own family long ago. Tyanata leaned in then, her tone gentler, as if to balance her sister's sharpness. She spoke of dreams, of nights she wished for safety more than freedom, for a life where every dawn wasn't another battle. Colt listened, every syllable stitching itself into his chest, and he found himself wondering if this, 2 women, 1 man, a fragile fire in the desert, could be called family. Winona's eyes met his once more. "Will you?" she asked again. His throat closed, unable to give shape to the storm within him. The night stretched on, the fire hissing low, and he knew he was standing at the edge of a canyon deeper than the one they sat in. By morning, the choice was no longer his alone. Word had traveled faster than the dawn, and when Colt led them into Dust Vale town, the stairs pierced like arrows. Dust Vale was a place where judgment lived in every window pane, where tongues sharpened in the shadows of saloons. The sheriff, Amos Burke, leaned against his post with a smirk, spit staining the dirt at his boot. Clara Bell, the saloon keeper, polished her counter with slow circles, her eyes flicking toward Colt with something like pity. At the chapel, preacher Jeremiah Stone clutched his Bible tighter, the leather worn thin from years of sermons that left little room for mercy. Colt stood tall, his voice a steady rumble. He would marry them both, he declared, not out of lust nor rebellion, but to grant them the dignity every soul deserved. Gasps rippled through the room, disbelief buzzing like angry hornets. Winona and Tyanata stood beside him, their fingers brushing his sleeve for courage, though their hands trembled all the same. Just then, a gunshot split the silence from outside, and the crowd rushed to the door. Someone clearly did not want this union to happen. Out on the street, Ezekiel Crow waited, his hat low, his sneer wide. Crow was a rancher who thrived on fear, his empire built on the backs of broken men and whispered threats. He spat into the dirt, his voice cutting through the dry air. "You think you can shame this town by marrying them both? Ain't no lawman nor preacher will back you, McGraw." Colt stepped forward, towering, but his hand did not go to the revolver at his side. The whole street watched, breath caught, waiting for the crack of gunfire. Instead, Colt laid his gun gently on the ground. His eyes never left Crow's, and silence thickened until even the cicadas hushed. "Strength ain't killing," Colt said finally. "It's standing when the world tells you to kneel." Crow faltered, his face twisting, but he turned away, his boots stomping through dust as the crowd murmured. A man had won without a bullet, and the town did not know what to make of it. At dawn the next day, they gathered under the crooked oak at the edge of town. No church bells, no crowd of smiling faces, only a preacher's cracked voice and 3 figures standing against the world. Colt's hand trembled as he spoke his vows, not from fear, but from the enormity of what he was promising. Winona placed her palm against his heart, steady as a drumbeat. Tyanata slipped her fingers through his, delicate but unyielding. For a moment it felt as though heaven itself bent low to listen. The vows were spoken, not in celebration, but in defiance, in hope, in the stubbornness of souls who refused to be forgotten. And yet just as the words settled into air, a rider emerged from the canyon, dust trailing behind like smoke. He carried a message that would shatter the fragile peace. Winona and Tyanata had been cast out forever by their own people, branded dishonored for the path they had chosen. The words struck like a whip. Winona bowed her head, shame pooling across her shoulders like a cloak too heavy to bear. Tyanata's grip on Colt's hand tightened, as though letting go would mean sinking beneath waves she could not swim. The town grew restless, mutters rising, their judgment now doubled. Colt felt every gaze upon him, every doubt pressing hard, but for the first time, he did not lower his eyes. He spoke, his voice loud, carrying farther than any sermon. "No one cast out stays lost under my roof." Silence followed, broken only by the creak of the oak in the wind. Then Clara Bell stepped forward, flowers in her hands, trembling but sure. She placed them gently into the sister's hair, and with that small act of grace, the town's silence cracked. One by one, faces softened, nods spread through the crowd, and the weight of scorn began to lift. For the first time, Dust Vale seemed less like a prison and more like a place where change might take root. As the sun slipped low, painting the sky with fire, the 3 of them walked away from the oak, side by side, shadows stretching long behind them. The town watched in quiet awe, no jeers, no stones, only the hush of wonder at what they had witnessed. And if you listen closely to the wind even now, you might hear it, the vow they made, not just to each other, but to life itself. A vow that dignity can be chosen, that love can be built from the ashes of shame, and that sometimes the bravest thing a soul can do is stand tall when the world whispers otherwise. And though their story had only just begun, the horizon ahead was wide and unbroken, waiting to be walked together, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat, into forever.